Welcome to the Hockey Writers Inc., the show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. Relax, the keyboard is off and the press box is closed, but the mic is just getting warmed up. Join your host, Lance Green, the guardian of the blue paint turned writer, and your co-host, Ron SteelFlyers, as we bring you all the latest on the Philadelphia Flyers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. with your host, Ron SteelFlyers. Hey, how you doing, everybody? I'll tell you what, folks, we got a very special edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. We're doing a Phantoms Spot Lite. That's right, folks. The Phantoms were in the uh, Atlantic semifinals for the five-game series against the Hershey Bears. And that's right, yours truly was in the house both at Allentown and at Hershey to cover both of those games and pretty much the whole entire series. Was able to cover the whole entire series. So we have a very, very, very special guest sitting in with us tonight. That's right, folks. We got the vice president of SteelFlyers.com, the statistician, and the one that keeps it all rocking and rolling. That's right, folks. RoNece has joined us on Hockey Writers Inc. for the first time ever because of the special edition of the Phantom Spotlight. Welcome, RoNece.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh man, I can't wait to get into this. We're going to talk exclusively about the last two games of the Phantoms. We're talking about Game 4 and Game 5 against the Hershey Bears. So, first of all, if you like what we do, please hit the like and subscribe, man. We would really appreciate that, and that really helps to keep us rocking and rolling. Also, big thank you to Jake and the boys for lowercaseblues.net. Go over to lowercaseblues.net. Jake and the boys of Lowercase Blues, they are the bomb. They got the music going for us here at the introduction of the show. Go over to lowercaseblues.net. Check out all their upcoming dates. Now that the weather's turning and it's starting to get nice and sunny outside and nice and long and everything like that, you got to go out there and check them guys out. They do a lot of gigs in the areas and around the beaches and stuff too. So you got to go over to lowercaseblues.net. Check them guys out. Big thanks to Jake. Also, big thanks to Spreaker for all they do and for allowing us to get out to all of the podcasting platforms. Really appreciate that. All right, folks, here we go. We got Game 4 and Game 5. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms versus the Hershey Bears, the defending Calder Cup champion Hershey Bears. And
Yay.
and after dropping Game 1 uh, uh, in Hershey, they dropped Game 1 and then came back and won Game 2 in Hershey, and then to Lehigh and played their two games there in Allentown, and they won the first one and then lost the second one, and they went back to Hershey and lost that one too. So they lost. They won those two games there in the middle. They lost the series 3-2. By the way, all of the photos that you see scrolling throughout this entire episode were taken by yours truly. That's right.
They're great photos too.
Well, thank you very
Lots of
much.
action shots.
Yes, like to try to get some of the action shots. So for sure, thank you all very much for that. What do you think, Ronies? Should we get diving in here to this?
Sure, why not?
Okay, here we go. First of all, I would like to say a huge thank you to Mr. Bob Rotruck, Mr. Connor Lawrence, um, for the access that we were granted this year, the media credentials that they were afforded to us by those folks from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. We really, really appreciate that. We hope that we can continue this relationship in the future. But like I said, big thank you to Bob Roadtruck, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and Connor Lawrence for helping us out. Also, big help and props to the Hershey Bears, the Giant Center, Jesse Liebman, and also um, Mr. Zish for helping us to have access to the Hershey games. So really appreciate that. Really thank you very much for that opportunity. Look forward to continuing that relationship as well too to help maybe cover some games next year. So
Yeah, you said they were very gracious and welcoming, and they made it, made sure
yeah,
everybody had what they needed.
yeah. I mean, Jesse pretty much showed me the ropes and gave me the tour and the whole 9 yards. It was a really great experience, and having a you know being seen at the rink. You know what I mean? So and covering the Phantoms, and being able to watch some of the Flyers prospects because there was a lot of ice time that these prospects were getting here,
Oh yeah.
especially in this series. You know what I mean? And well needed, much needed ice time, I think, as well too. So all right, well, okay. So look, the elephant in the room here is this: Phantoms lost. They
Yes, they did, unfortunately.
they they went up against the defending champions, okay? And
They did,
when
it's like they started out really, really strong, and then they faded off.
well, I'm going to attribute that to one major aspect here that I think was a huge contribution to what happened here to the Phantoms. If you look at the last two games that were played by the Phantoms and the Hershey Bears, and who was starting in net? Cal Peterson.
Oh, Peterson.
Right. I think he is the highest paid AHL player going, period, all day long, with a 5.5 AA, 5.5 million AAV. So I believe his contract comes off the books this year, but the man let in 10 goals. Okay,
Yeah, that is a problem.
that
You know.
that's a serial problem. Okay, now we're going to get into a couple of the other things too that I think are some issues, but that has to be addressed from jump. When Parker got hurt and went down, okay, and Cal Peterson came in relief and didn't allow a goal, okay, and had some awesome glove saves and looked really great, okay, but he only had to play like a period and a half, and that was it, okay,
Right.
and he did great, but when he had to start, it just went downhill from there.
Yeah, they did.
Uh, when you let in 10 goals in two games and then you only score five, well, that's not going to win you much. You know what I
No.
mean?
Well, the okay. To be fair, I think one of them, I think a couple of them are empty net goals, but you know what I mean.
Okay,
Um,
I'm with you, but there was still a lot of goals scored against Cal Peterson, and I
yeah,
think
I agree.
that's indicative of what happened to the Phantoms. Okay, I mean, I would have at least started Bjornson or something. A game, mate. Well, I mean, okay, I get it. It's game four, game five of the series. I
Right.
understand. I
Well,
understand the
I know.
concept of where you are and what's at stake and who you have to play for you. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, with that being said, I still think that that was the major contributing factor to what happened to the Phantoms. I also think that the disgusting amount of penalties that the Phantoms took. I mean, they averaged
I mean,
five and a half penalties per game.
I know, isn't that ridiculous? And well, we'll talk about it, but
Okay, but I
um,
mean, when you average that amount of penalties and the opposition doesn't, two or three. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that watching every single one of these games, there wasn't some bad calls or calls that weren't made or calls that should have been made or whatever you want to call it. And there
no,
was
they
a
were
lot of that. I can't believe some of the
Okay,
calls they made.
so my favorite was, what was it? Who was behind the net? Was it Wisdom or
Oh, I think
um?
it was either Richard or Deoné. I think it was Richard that got tackled.
Yeah, and then we got a penalty for, and
And
I'm
our
like,
guy
what?
goes into the box. Like,
Right, that didn't make sense to me.
excuse you?
Now, I couldn't see, like, where I was sitting, I couldn't see it all, but I just thought that was a really odd penalty that they
I mean, that
called.
was just one example. And then when there's a kerfuffle and there's a combination of all the players, all of the there's two guys going to the box on the Lehigh side and nobody going on the into the box on the Hershey side. It was like,
Right.
wait a minute. You mean to tell me through all of that and Hershey just came out lily white and all that?
Well,
Okay.
it was such a huge change from the game that the Phantoms won against Hershey, the second game they won, where Hershey was taking a lot of penalties and a lot of misconducts and a lot of issues with the players being
Yeah.
aggressive, the Hershey players.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was all Lehigh Valley or the Phantoms. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how that switched. Like,
It did seem like there was kind of a different switch there. Do you know what I mean?
I
Like what?
mean, maybe Hershey kind of got the, lecture from the coach to be a little more disciplined. You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't know.
okay. Now look, Todd Nelson, the head coach of the Hershey Bears, is a heck of a coach. I mean, three Calder Cups in a row. Okay, been with the organization for some time now. Has a great reputation as an awesome coach. Um, as a Philadelphia Flyer fan and or whatever, we would covet a guy like Nelson to come and coach for the Flyers, seeing as how
Yeah.
the Flyers need a coach, and he would be a good coach. He's got some good pedigree under him. I mean, he's got three Calder Cups in a row and going for a fourth one. I mean, you remember what you said a little bit earlier about a switch? How
Mm-hmm.
it seemed very different. I'm going to tell you right now, the energy level was way different for the Phantoms in the last
Yeah, I
two games
agree.
that they won or that they lost.
I
The
agree.
energy level was way different for the Phantoms. They just
Like
weren't. Yeah,
the first two games, I feel like they were like ramped up and they were aggressive and they were fighting and not fight. They were fighting, but you know what I mean. Pushing themselves a little bit. You know what I mean? Like,
pushing the play. They were pushing the play
yes,
in the
and they
first
were
three
pressuring
games.
Hershey in their
Yes,
end,
yes,
and
yes.
I did not see a lot of that in the last two games.
Exactly, exactly. And that was I think that was the major issue. They got outshot in almost every single game. Even the games that they won, I still think they got outshot. But
Yeah.
and they weren't able to capitalize on the power play as nearly as timely as Hershey was able to. And Hershey didn't
Right.
even have the best power play this year. They were like middle of the road ranked, like 16th, 17th, or 18th. I think they were ranked this year for their power play. Which, look, if you give a middle of the road team enough chances on the power play, they're gonna score.
Right.
Especially 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 two 5-on-3s in a row.
Yeah. Didn't there was like 2 minutes of 5-on-3 on in the last game. It was like,
Like
here's the other thing. Here's the other thing about power plays. This is what I saw. The As soon as the Phantoms started to get a little bit of momentum going, they would get a penalty, which would
yeah,
completely throw them off.
yep,
And they couldn't. I think that was the big difference between the game they won and these last two games is they couldn't get that um, momentum and
yep.
what's the word I'm looking for?
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying
Yeah, they
because
couldn't build that.
yes, and it didn't seem like they had the juice, you know?
Right.
They just didn't have the juice in those last two games. And the Perrier tried to switch up the lines a little bit where kind of had Deone and uh, and Bump and Lachenko on the same line, right? And
Hmm.
he took Richard off of that line, right? Because Lachenko has been playing with Richard pretty much the whole time with Wilson, right? Well, they switched that up and put Jet down with Bump and you know what I mean. And so,
And Richard or something.
well, Richard, yeah, but they switched up the
Yeah,
lines
Richard. Yeah,
there,
I'm
right?
sorry.
But they switched up the lines there a little bit in that fourth game. Now I think he was juggling lines because of trying to give guys a break and being out there on the penalty kill a lot, being out there on the you know and everything else like
Right.
that. So and he did use his timeouts. Uh, uh, Coach LePerriere did use both of his timeouts for each game. So I mean, okay,
I don't know. It just kept going against them, and like I said, they could never get in a rhythm. They couldn't build any momentum. They
right.
just
They didn't have any juice. It's like
yep,
it seemed like they were out of gas, and it seemed like what happened was is that it almost seemed like Hershey just kind of kicked into that next gear, and
yeah,
they spent more time down in the Phantoms end. They spent more time pushing the play, and the Phantoms spent more time chasing. Okay, when you're
right.
chasing, you're usually losing. And what Hershey did was they came out right out of the gates and just dropped a three goal on them. You know, the end of the
Hmm.
first period, it was 3-0. It's like, well, all right,
It's
that's
hard
gonna
to
be,
work back from that.
yeah,
So they're
exactly,
they're coming. And that's what happened Friday. Also, Hershey scored a couple of goals early, and the Phantoms couldn't catch up. Like they couldn't get
exactly,
they beginning of the second period, they did score two goals, but that was it. They never
yeah,
quite
got it,
finished up.
right.
I mean, they never, yeah,
Exactly. In game four, and I really thought that second period when they did score those two goals, I thought, all right, here we go. It was a series. We're within one. You know what I mean? We're here we go. Right? And then it was just, man, I think that there was a lot of youth compared to a lot of veterans. Right?
I think it might have made a difference.
The Phantoms
You
had
know,
a lot of guys that have never been there, have never done that. And Hershey Bears, most of the guys on that team, this is their second or third go around now here at this Apple, right? With this team, with these
right?
group of guys. So I mean, Hershey is going to be a tough team. I somebody asked me when we were in the press box, and I said, yeah, I think if Lehigh can win, then they'll go on. But I said, man, I just don't. Hershey's a tough mountain to climb. Okay, and the Phantoms put up a good fight. Okay, and took them to task, took them to the final game, right? And it was just amazing to watch the development of some of these um, prospects, seeing wisdom grow extensively this past season, right? We're seeing what we could potentially see with Luchenko. We're seeing what we potentially could see with Bump. I mean, Luchenko led the AHL with assists. I mean,
Right.
okay, so there is
I
some
mean, there's
skill. There's some
talent
talent.
there.
Right. See, exactly, exactly. So, with that being said, this is the second year in a row now the Phantoms have made it to the playoffs, and then not only did they, but now they went out in a first of a best of three series last year. They lost, but hey,
Hmm.
they took the defending Calder Cup champions to a 5 game series. I say that's improvement. Okay,
Yes, I would say so too.
exactly, and players improved, And I think Richard improved when he started getting ice time with Luchenko because those two guys are really fast and they can kind of keep up with each other. Do you know what I mean? And so I think there's other little
Right.
key matchups that you're going to see as well too, with the prospects coming up through the Phantoms, and I'm really excited about the draft that's coming up this June here real soon. So I got to tell you, RoNece, thank you very much for hopping on here and
Oh
helping
wait,
us.
I have some I have some random stats for you. You ready?
Okay,
A
random
random
stat.
facts.
All right, random stat.
Random. Yeah. So things I learned as I was um, watching the games or reading about it. You mentioned the head coach Todd Nelson.
Yes.
Todd Nelson is just one of three individuals to win a Calder Cup as a player, assistant coach, and a head coach in the AHL,
How about that?
in the history of the AHL. Isn't that
Right.
awesome?
Right. There you
I
go.
just thought that was cool.
That's a cool random.
Um,
And that's another
yeah,
reason why he's why Lance and I covet him as a coach for the Flyers.
right. Because I mean, he's obviously knows what he's doing, right?
He's obviously doing it all right. You know what I mean? He's meshing the young guys and the veterans. You know, there at Hershey and being
Mm-hmm.
able to put it together. You know what I mean? So
The other
congratulations to
thing
the
I
Hershey
wanted to,
Bears. Congratulations to the Hershey
yep,
Bears for moving on. They're playing Charlotte. Checkers.
yes. So here, can I ask you a quick question before we leave?
You
Before we
can.
wrap up?
Yep, you can.
Okay. So next season, or do you think any of these players are going to move up to the Flyers? And what do you think they should do to be successful next season? Like, what specific thing do you think they need to work on for next season?
I think you're going to see some of the guys get a shot. I think you're going to see Emil Andre, I think, should probably be more of a regular with the big club. I think Helgi Grans might potentially have tried to earn himself a spot as well, too. Right? These guys are all going to have to show out in training camp and have a good camp and everything else like that. Okay?
Right.
Um, I definitely think we're going to see Luchenko. I definitely think we're going to see him. I also think we're going to see Bump and or um, a player that we didn't get to see playing in this series, but Denver Barkay. I think we're going to see him too. He's currently right now playing with the London Knights in their um, championship cup right now as well too, with the against the Oshawa
Okay.
Generals. Right, that's the CHL finals. Right, so. Um, I think you're going to see those prospects start to chip away at the and potentially make the lineup and make the big club because of the
Okay.
advancements that they've had this season, because of how well they've done. You might even see Wisdom crack it with how well Wisdom became a force towards
Yes, he
the
did.
last half of the season, and then in the playoffs, he's shown above all else, right? He put in 3 goals, 2 shorties, right? And
Hmm.
he was a factor in every game. Okay.
Yes, he was. And in fact, the Friday game, the third game, he was the one that started the comeback
Right.
in the second at the beginning of the
Exactly.
second period, and
Right.
he knocked it in, and he was always trying to push it. He was one of the people that I saw that really wanted to seem like he had more energy than the others. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, it does. And I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, he was noticeable out there on the ice. Do you know what I mean? So, all
Mm-hmm.
right. I think there is some future for some of these players, even with the Flyers, I think. So we'll have to see how it goes. We'll have to see how the draft goes, and we'll also have to see how the coaching carousel goes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's going to make a difference.
that's going to make a huge difference. You know what I mean? And if they're waiting around to interview a guy like Coach Nelson for the Hershey Bears, then they're going to have to wait a little bit. And I'm okay with that. I would be okay with waiting for a coach like that. Does that make sense? But if you're not
That
going to
does
wait,
make sense.
but if you're not going to wait for a coach like that, then who you got on the phone? Who's sitting in there for the interviews? What do you got? Because the sooner
Right.
you
Well,
bring
we
a
won't.
coach in, the better I think the organization's going to be. And I think that was the big
Right.
mistake that they did when they waited until 2 weeks before the draft to bring in John Tortorella.
Yeah, I was gonna say I hope they don't do the same thing they did
I
with Torts.
see. I'm a firm believer in bringing the coach in as soon as possible. To get everybody acclimated and blah blah blah, so he doesn't have to spend all summer figuring out who these guys are without them being around.
Right.
And so hey, what do I know? Anyway,
Yeah, we're venturing into Flyers territory there. So
right. But all in all, big thank you to Lehigh Valley Phantoms. A great season. Second year in a row, they made it to the playoffs. They made it to a little bit further in the playoffs this year with beating the daunted Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins in the best of three series there, taking those two games from them, and then of course pulling the long straw there against the Hershey Bears and losing the best of five series 3 games to 2. Well, folks, I got to
I
tell
would
you.
like to say,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I want to say one last thing. I think that the Phantoms have the best mascot in the AHL. I think that Melvin is hilarious. So I just wanted to put that out there because if you haven't seen Melvin, you haven't gone to a Phantoms game, and you have the opportunity, you should. It's a fun little arena, and you have a good time.
It is. And that's something that Lance and I have both said on air as well too. That it's a great experience. It's a great family experience. There's really it's a really good access. You're pretty. There's not a bad seat in the house.
No, there really
There
isn't.
really isn't a. I mean, even in the quote unquote nosebleeds, those are still really good seats. Anywhere you slice it, there's a good seat there in the house, and you need to go down there and check out the PPL Center there, and check out a Phantoms home game. It's a really great experience. Once again, thank you to Mr. Rotruck and to Mr. Lawrence and the Lehigh Valley Phantoms for access and media credentials for this season. We hope we can continue this for next season. If you like what we do, please hit the like and subscribe. We will catch you all on the next episode of the Hockey Writers Inc.